Welcome to Perspectives in Mobile, the news podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum. Join us discussing the world of telecommunications, technology, and mobile innovations. From London, Dario Betti, MEF CEO.
Welcome to Perspective, the podcast from the Mobile Ecosystem Forum, looking at the different opinions, the different views from the different parts of the mobile ecosystem as a whole. And I'm very happy to welcome today Stephanie Lashley, the VP of Messaging, Strategic Alliance and Infrastructure at Bandwidth Inc. Now, we are then talking about one of those core discussions at MEF. Bandwidth, as you know, is a communication platform as a service, a CPaaS company that sells software application programming interfaces, APIs, for voice, text messaging, and emergency services using its own global IP voice network. And I should say, it is a very big name in the USA as well. So we're going to be talking about all of that and the US in it. But Stephanie, first of all, welcome.
Thank you. Happy to be here today.
Great, Stephanie. Now, you have to play along with us. We call ourselves Perspectives, and so we would like to start with that view. I mean, you live the industry, you lived in different roles the industry. So we would like to get back to your view of what's the USA market for business messaging today. What do you think of it?
I think it's growing. I think that we know that over 90% of businesses are now including text messaging in their messaging or their marketing strategy. And so, I think it's an exciting time. I think it's a time of growth and innovation, and I'm really excited about it.
The numbers are very positive. The growth has been a great positive story.
Yeah.
Even at a time where some part of the world are not so lucky, let's say. But we've also heard a lot from the US about the specific, I should say, if not regulatory, compliance environment. So USA has built its own set of rules, very different from other markets. I just mentioned 10DLC, show codes, solutions. How has all that impacted the market? How are you leaving these new solutions?
Yeah, so I would say in the United States, we're talking a lot about the need to streamline compliance and regulations, specifically the registration process. So I think that when you step back and you compare the U.S. messaging ecosystem with the rest of the world, we see that the U.S. is an enormous market, and its A2P messaging is kept pretty compliant by a relatively small, streamlined body of 3 carriers that really work collaboratively with one another. We're pretty lucky. But you compare that to the markets of similar size across Europe and Asia, and you're looking at sometimes dozens of carriers serving the same population size. I think this creates a little bit of confusion and complication for users of SMS interactions. I think comparatively, the U.S. market is pretty simple and offers a more ubiquitous experience for businesses than it does outside of the U.S. I think while we do focus on compliance and regulation in the United States, it is pretty streamlined.
Well, let's stay with the US market for a bit, and let's stay with Bandwidth. I should probably point out, I think Bandwidth was started in 1999 by David Morgan,
Yes.
currently a CEO. So you've been around, what I would say, congratulations on your 25th birthday, quarter of a century for Bandwidth. Now, it starts Bandwidth as it says more voice-centric, given that 1999, that makes lots of sense. But you've now really majored into the messaging area as well.
Right.
Now, you've done potentially that by bringing some of your existing voice customers to the business messaging. And with that, you might have experienced and witnessed the changing expectations, the changing understanding of what business messaging is. How would you define these enterprises? What they have learned through you?
I would say brands are more savvy now. I would say their expectations are higher. I would say that, 10 years ago, brands didn't know to ask about throughput or how many messages were being sent a second. I would say that conversations have evolved into, more technical or educated conversations. We're talking about delivery receipts. We're talking about how many messages the brand can actually get delivered and what that actually looks like. So I think those elements are now table stakes for most brands. Even with the enforcement of compliance regulations, brands see text messaging as a key component of their marketing strategy. Whereas 10 years ago, I think it was a relatively new concept.
Well, let's talk about your career for main messaging for a bit, because you were talking about mobile operators before. And so when we reflect back over the last few years, your experience is also very important because you were, at the time, or operators, you were in Sprint, now part of T-Mobile, and then you moved to bandwidth. Now, from your perspective, what has been the significant shift of the enterprises?
Yeah, well, I think my experience allows me to see multiple sides of the messaging industry. Because I worked at Sprint for 15 years, I definitely default to viewing things from a carrier perspective. It's hard for me to take my carrier hat off sometimes, but I also understand brands and how companies, large, small, medium, use messaging to reach their customers. I also worked in advertising for a period of time. And so I worked directly with brands on creating their marketing strategy. And now at Bandwidth, as a direct connect aggregator, I feel like I can see the full picture. I think my experience is unique.
Well, it sounds very much so. So let me test some of that uniqueness as well. Let me use it here. We hear a lot, for very good reason, about AI. And in our market, as in our telecommunication, we hear about that flavor, which is generative AI. All of a sudden, computers can create conversations, messages, pictures. I dare say video, probably a bit still on the rough side right now. But much better, I would say, than me at least. So average, which is pretty good. Now, that's changed all of a sudden business messaging as well. Does it mean that are we going to be seeing to a new level of conversations, a new level of messaging, or too many messages, or better messages? What are we going to be seeing with AI coming to change everything and change potentially business messaging as well?
I think so. I think what we're going to start to see is this balance or this mix between human intelligence and the data that we're able to gather and learn from. I think Bandwidth sees AI as a learning tool. At Bandwidth, we're using AI to gather and synthesize data versus allowing the technology to make all the decisions for us. I think that, we're using technology to make data-driven decisions and to better inform our decisions. But I do think the industry is on the cusp of seeing AI infiltrate the products, if you will.
Interesting. So it changes everything, you're saying.
It could. It could change everything.
I think, and by the way, let me ask you a question, a very rough question, almost a yes and no, horrible type of questions. But do you think it's going to be positive for this industry?
I think technology and growth and learning is positive. With that always comes the opportunity to use technology in a not so positive way. I'll say it that way.
I mean, very well balanced, and it isn't true for technology. It depends on what you do with it, isn't it?
Right,
so
right.
We are going to be seeing more scams and more services with AI as well, but equally better targeting and better messages as well, and potentially better
That's
solutions.
right.
Now, and let's talk about technology of a different type, because you cannot mention nowadays messaging without referencing, even in US, which is still a market in love with SMS. But we do have 100 million users that use WhatsApp. You have specific messengers. And there RCS, the new flavor of SMS, is gaining traction as well.
Right.
Now, what does it mean for SMS? If you are an enterprise today thinking about campaigns, do they need to look at all of these? Should we focus on SMS? What's the best way to tell them to start?
So I personally think that SMS will always be relevant. Even with the use of RCS, you have the SMS fallback. So I do think that when we're looking at the entire product portfolio for messaging, SMS is still in the mix. RCS was always touted as this MMS killer. It was never touted as the SMS killer. In my opinion, I do believe that it will always remain in the mix in some way, shape, or form. Maybe not so much as it is today. Maybe it'll take a back seat, but I think it will always be relevant. I also think that the Apple development is leveling the playing field between OTT and carrier-driven text messaging. So I do think it's interesting what we're starting to see from Apple. And I do think, RCS and the productization of 10DLC are two significant shifts in the messaging industry over the last few years. I think one of the things that we've learned is that carrier involvement is crucial for successful launch and adoption of a product. And productization at the carrier level takes time. So while the RCS spec doc and technology have been out for some time, since I think 2013, we still need to price it and we still need to bring it to market. But I'm hopeful that happens or we get closer in 2025.
Well, I'd like to go back to something you just mentioned before, the uniqueness of your career. The fact that you have seen the advertising side, the telco side, and now the CPaaS side, the solution that makes it happen. How does that make you look at these technology changes right now? The RCS. Are we talking sometimes too much about the technology rather than the overall enterprise and solutions?
I do think that we do spend a lot of time talking about the technology. And I think that is an important aspect, but I don't think it's everything. I think that as an industry, if we talked about productization, how to price something, how to go to market, how to bring a product to market in a collaborative fashion, I think we'd be better set up for success if we looked at it like that. If we looked at it less as competition between our fellow industry partners and looked at it more collaboratively. Like, how can we together, cross-functionally, collaboratively, bring this product to market?
Well, let me then ask you a follow-up question, and that is, you're right. Tech collaborations, potentially many other things. What do you need to drive then the innovation? What would you tell the regulatory, the players of this world, telecoms and the enterprise out there, that is necessary in driving innovation?
I would say that typically this industry, while we may be fast to implement technology or develop technology, we have been slow to productize or bring products to market. I would love to see us get a little bit faster. I'd love to see us working more collaboratively together to bring products to market. I think that sometimes we do spend a lot of time focusing on the technology. We spend less time talking about the business or market aspects. And I think that's kind of what's most important to these brands. How much is it going to cost? How do I interact with it? How do I register and get compliant? What are the rules? I think those are the types of things that we should probably start spending more time on.
Oh, okay. So more time to set almost a tools, a process to think about stuff in a different ways. Let me ask you about bandwidth in that case. Let me ask you, is there something initiative-wise, potentially some of the tools, or rules for some of the processes that you're very proud that you've been part of in advancing or bringing to the messaging space in the last few years?
Yeah, so Bandwidth has been very active in messaging over the last 6 years. I would say there's been so much work that the teams have done, in particular, advancing Bandwidth as a direct connect aggregator. We are fully implemented with a tier 1 carrier, and we are working every day to improve our overall efficiency of our products, advocating for our customers. That's been a huge opportunity for Bandwidth. There's also been a lot of work on a project called, or what we're calling, messaging health. So a major part of our DCA accomplishment came from years of building trust in the messaging ecosystem. David Morgan, as you know, spoke about this at MEF in Las Vegas in October, and he described some of this there, but these changes really required deep top-level personnel changes, website changes, blog changes. The company is really evolving to become that messaging leader and not just a voice leader. And I think these changes put us in a position to strategically support our customers in improving their message health, their deliverability, to the point where we've been able to release a suite of features and add-ons with the same goal. And this messaging health initiative really allows us to do that.
We like the ecosystem sustainable and healthy. So let's look reviewing everything we're doing and getting it ready to the next level of quality. So what's our future outlook? What are we going to be seeing next? In the USA for business messaging, and take your pick. 5 years, 10 years, you tell me, how big is your crystal ball?
Love to have a crystal ball. I would say in the next 5 years, we're going to see probably more conversational use cases. So think about teachers, think about healthcare, using text messaging to contact their students, the parents of the students, healthcare providers reaching out to patients. I think that e-commerce, retail, health, UCAS, CAS, we're seeing all of those different types of use cases embracing messaging. And I think it's going to just continue to grow over the next 5 years. And I also think that that's where RCS comes in with some of this conversational use case that is where RCS thrives, is that interaction. And I think it's going to be a great, I think the next 5 years for messaging are going to be very exciting.
So let's expect more of those conversational elements. So not just one message, one notifications of something happens, but all of a sudden it becomes more interactive with humans and potentially with robots. Who knows? But I think that's very true, and I think it's very exciting as you mentioned it. Listening to the teachers and to the healthcare. Wouldn't that make lots of sense even today to have been able to do that? And potentially it is available. So we'll go and see. Let's see what happens. Back on the questions of your experience in multiple parts of the industry and for the last few years at Bandwidth. So if you were to give some of it, let's say business enterprises, some of the people that are looking at messaging today, what would that be?
I would say focus on compliance and registration. I would say it's important to find a partner that's an expert in compliance and not a partner that offers a quick fix just to win the business. Sometimes the decisions that we make at Bandwidth are tough because sometimes our customers don't want to comply. We make hard decisions every day. I would say that finding a partner with strong carrier relationships that has industry expertise, that's a direct connect aggregator, that can advocate for specific use cases, creative use cases, a partner that wants to get creative within the industry to affect change is very important.
It's almost back to what you were saying, of the health. It seems to be, you were saying you need a good structure and good for those healthy providers. It seems to say that can provide you with higher quality, not just looking for cheaper volume. Invest in your customer experience. There is multiple layers in business messaging. It's not just the price of an SMS. Subscribe to the message as part of the MEF community overall. Isn't that true? So thank you. And with that, I hope that advice will be heard and taken notice of for many of the enterprise and business out there. But today, I think that's the time we have available, Stephanie. So I'd like to thank you again for sharing with us your perspective, your experience, and what you see that is going to be coming up from this industry out there. Stephanie, I'm sure we'll see you at the next MEF event very shortly.
Looking forward to it. And thank you so much.
Thank you. And stay with us. Remember to subscribe to our podcast and to look every week for our new episode. This week, you'll listen to Stephanie Lashley, the VP of Messaging, Strategic Alliance and Infrastructure at Bandwidth. Thank you very much, Stephanie. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Perspectives in Mobile. Join us next as we explore telecoms, technology, and mobile innovations. Stay tuned, stay connected, and let's unlock the mobile potential together.